Okay, right, let me continue by sharing my screen. 1 second. Okay, so, all right, I am so sorry about that. I think I took a couple of minutes there. But all right, so let me get started. So today I wanted to talk about, I think I was asked to talk about, give a quick introduction to project management, and I guess it's more relevant to IT project management. So let me try to cover some topics at a very high level, because if you look at the whole topic as a subject, there are a lot of things to go a little deeper into in order to really get a good understanding. But today what I'm hoping to do is kind of cover the topic at a very high level. So anyone who's even new to the topic, who wants to get an understanding of what the subject is, can get a good understanding. So feel free to ask questions if you all have any questions while going through the slide set as well. I'll be happy to take those up as well, and feel free to use the chat as well. I'll try to take the questions as we go as possible. All right, I hope you all can see my screen, so I am going to proceed. So today I'm hoping to kind of go through the session covering 5 topics mainly, which are, first of all, I want to quickly talk about what project management is, what a project is, and then a little bit about the roles and responsibilities of a project manager, especially with relation to an IT project. And then little bit about what the core competencies are, because when you're looking at a project management career path, apart from the technical knowledge, there's a certain other set of skills required for you to really excel in that role. So let's talk a little bit about those competencies and the soft skills and things like that. And especially if you look at the IT industry today, there are different ways you can manage projects. We have widely used range methods like Agile project management being adapted more and more in the IT industry today. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And finally, a little bit about what you can do to get into a project management career path if you're interested to learn more in that area. All right. So starting with what a project is. So it's really important to understand before we go into a lot of details what a project is, because this kind of sets the basis for all the discussion of all the things we are about to talk today, right? So if you look at the definition, it's very simple, right? It's almost one sentence. It says a project is a temporary endeavor undertaken to create a unique product, service, or result. Sounds simple, right? So, but if you really go into detail, all of these words are like clearly thought through, which adds a lot of meaning to the definition of a project. So let's talk a little bit here. I'm going to spend a little bit more time to talk about what a project is, because as I mentioned, it's going to be helpful to set the basis for the rest of the conversations we are going to have. So the first thing we're talking about here is that it's a temporary endeavor. What does that mean? What is a temporary endeavor? That means it's not directly talking about a duration, because the moment you say it's temporary, what usually comes to our mind is, oh, it's short term. Well, it's not necessarily that. It's really talking about having a definite start and a definite end date, right? When if you're saying, okay, I'm working on a project, it can't be going on forever. Like it should have a start date and an end date. And then when you say an end date, how does projects end? Does it always by achieving the goal? That's not the case. Like if you really think, I'm sure there are like multiple experience in your day-to-day situations, or like in your group projects and any other areas that you all have been involved in. I'm sure that you all have come across situations where the project didn't really end by it getting delivered, right? So there's like obviously the expected way, which is meeting the objectives. When you start a project, you have certain set of objectives you want to meet. So one way to end the project is by meeting your project objectives, and another way is basically the project will be terminated because you can't really meet your objectives. Maybe when you set your objectives first, they were valid, but now given the current scenario, those objectives are no longer valid. So maybe you realize that you can't meet that objectives and you have to terminate the project. And similar to that is the need for the project is no longer there. So like even you kickstart the project in order to achieve something, halfway through you realize this is no longer needed. So you can't really continue and you have to terminate the project. So likewise, there are many ways that a project can end, but in any way, should have a start date. If you take a construction project, you expected it to be there stable for a very long period of time, right? So likewise, the outcome, the unique product, service, or result you're getting out from that project doesn't have to be temporary. It could be there for a long time. But the main key thing to get out of those particular two words of temporary endeavor is having a defined start and a defined end date. All right. And when you look at, especially in the IT industry, that you see, apart from developing work that goes on, software engineering and quality engineering, all of those people contributing to get a project out, there are a certain set of activities that happen on a daily basis. These are mostly repetitive activities. You call them operational work. Sometimes it could be so you develop a certain application and it's out there live, and there are like certain number of users using the application, and then you have to provide support for your users, right? So maybe you have support system set up to kind of make sure that happens, and monitoring. If there are issues, production issues, or queries from customers, support those. So all of those go in as operational work. However, this operational work doesn't really fall under a category of a project because they're repetitive, right? So then the question rises, what if you're working on similar projects? As an example, let's say there's a company taking up project work to redesign office spaces, right? So basically what they're doing is taking up multiple office spaces, and then they're designing them. So it's kind of very similar, right? You get in all the tables, chairs, and set it up. So does that mean that this is not a project? Does that fall under an operation? That is not really the case, because every project even though it's a similar project, it's different. You could be using different type of vendors. You could be designing, using different furniture, different colors, or there's always some sort of, or even the resources. The same carpenters who are doing the floor in one place may not be doing the floor in the other place. So there's always a unique part added to it. So that's how that contributes to the overall definition of a project. When we talk about always having a unique product, service, or a result involved when we talk about a project, right? So that's the key thing we want to understand when we talk about what a project is. All right. So I will move on to the next slide. So, right. So we talked about what a project is, and then we need to understand why we need to manage a project, right? So this is like this. We don't really think about this a lot because this comes naturally, because it's out there, it's already set up, and we know what's happening. But the main reason we have to manage projects is because projects do fail, right? No matter how good a developer we are, how good quality engineering folks we have, maybe how good our stakeholder is, projects do fail. And I think we can talk about so many number of projects, even in our day-to-day lives, which didn't really go well because we didn't have that right person with the right skill set to coordinate the work, coordinate the dependencies, and look at it at an overall perspective from end to end to get that project delivered. So this is where project management kind of comes in, to talk about how we can succeed in these projects. What do we really need to look at to figure out how we can meet the objectives of this project so we can complete the project successfully. And also when you say completing a project successfully, we also need to talk about what is success, because for different projects, this could be different, because sometimes we have very large projects, and sometimes the projects could be small with like few people, maybe 2 or 3 people, and sometimes we might have maybe 50 to 100 people in a project team. So with the different team sizes, different objectives, your project objectives differ, and the criteria you agree as your success criteria also differ. So as a project manager, and also where project management comes in is where we try to figure out how we manage all of these to ensure that we succeed, right? So maybe before we move on and talk about how kind of project management fits into all of this, we need to talk a little bit about the key reasons we see out there as to why projects fail. Mainly, if you talk about them, you say when initiating the project, correct details aren't going out. Sometimes the reason for initiating the project is not really communicated. So it's incorrectly initiated for the wrong reasons. And sometimes when at the level of initiating, when setting the project objectives, they're not communicated properly, or they're set incorrectly. So because of that mistake at the beginning, your whole project could fail. Sometimes it's inadequate planning, because when you go to the planning level, there's a lot of planning you need to do at a detail level to get a project right. So if you don't do that right, your execution part goes wrong, and your monitoring, controlling, and everything throughout kind of fails. So how do you get that planning right? Sometimes it could be about getting your requirements. So I'm sure if you all have gone through your software engineering models, you've heard this explanation about how the requirements aren't getting right to the developers. So what you're developing is not what the customer or the user is actually expecting at the end of the day. So how do you manage this? How do you balance this off? Then lack of project visibility. So when you take a project, there are like so many stakeholders involved, from your if you're working in a company, from your managers to leadership, your team members, your it could be your clients, and maybe if you're developing a project with the community, your stakeholders are your community as well. So how do you communicate across all of these stakeholders about the project and about what's going on? And lacking there could be a reason to some of these issues we see that eventually add up to failed projects. You see poor risk management, communication gaps. So likewise, there are a lot of things at the end of the day that add in for a project to fail. So this is where the role of a project manager and managing projects come in, because we are trying to create a culture where everyone can step in, and everyone, through project management, we try to balance this off, manage all of these factors in order to meet the project objectives. All right. Right. So with that, we can talk about what project management is, right? Project management is basically the application of your knowledge, your skills, tools, and techniques to project activities and eventually meet the project requirements, right? So here, specifically, we are talking about using the knowledge, the theoretical knowledge you gain, or the knowledge you gain from your experience, or doing professional qualifications, putting all of that in, using all the skills. When we talk about skills for a project manager, your soft skills are really important. Communication is a key thing for you, right, to build a career, because you're like, it's not a task that you're doing on your own. It's a task that you're doing with everyone else. You're being a facilitator, you're being a leader to achieve a goal. So in order to do that, you need to have a certain set of skills, right? So if it's an IT project, apart from knowing the technical things going on, you need to be able to get the expertise in, get their thoughts, get their ideas to your project, and get those in a plan to really get the project rolling. So for all of that, you need the right skill set. And nowadays, you have a lot of tools available for you. I'm sure most of you all have seen some of these tools like MS Project, there's Smart Sheets, there's Trello board, a lot of tools. There's Jira, Confluence, like document management systems. Then there's Clarity, AHA, like a lot of tools, applications out there that you can use to help you manage a project, maybe to keep track of your resources, maybe it's to keep track of your budgets, it could be to keep track of the documents, requirements. So a lot of tools you can use out there. So you need to be able to pick and choose what is required for your project without overcomplicating things. So this is also a key part. And then finally, like at the end of the day, what you do is there are like a lot of activities involved in a project, right? So you bring all of these activities into one place and try to coordinate them, get them going, track them. So finally, you meet the objectives of the project. So this is what project management is all about. So from this point onwards, as a project manager, there are like a lot of things that you can get involved in. Like to manage the project, you need to identify the requirements, maybe address various concerns, identify your stakeholders. You might have to kind of figure out, okay, if this is my team, how can I build my team? If this is my stakeholders, what kind of meetings do I need in my project environment? How many of those meetings do I need? We need to figure out all of those things to really manage the project, right? Right. So before I move on to the next slide, I just want to do a quick check. If am I still audible, or is there black background noise for you?
You are audible, madam.
Okay. At any point of time, if you feel like there's a little bit more noise in my background, please let me know. I will try to see if I can get my headset connected again, because there's a little bit of rain going outside. So do let me know. I will try to make it audible as possible. All right. Next slide. So I talked about what project management is, right? And a key part of this is managing the constraints. So what are these constraints? So constraints are basically, you can call them as resources or things you need for your project. And in project management, there's this keyword where you call triple constraints. So these are the three key constraints that you need to balance out in a project, namely their scope, time, and cost, right? So these three constraints, they kind of compete with each other. When you change your scope, it affects your time and cost. When you change your time, it kind of affects your scope and cost. Likewise, same with cost, right? So as a project manager, what you do is, in order to manage your project, you balance these constraints out. If there's a problem with your, sometimes your stakeholder might come back and say, I need to increase the scope, which happen quite often in IT projects, right? There's a change of scope, or there's a little bit more detail that we missed, or something that needs to be added. So how do you manage this? If the project doesn't really make sense going out to the users without this particular scope, so then you need to look at what are the constraints that you can change to take in that scope, right? So maybe you might say, okay, if we take this new scope in, I might need another month to deliver the project. Or if I still need to meet that timeline with the additional scope, I need more budget so I can get more people. So that might not be the correct answer for all the projects, right? Because you can't put, all the people you have and expect them to deliver in, increase or reduce your timelines, right? Just because you have people. So likewise, you need to identify how much you can change these constraints in order to deal with the changes that happen out there when you're working on an IT project. And these are not the only constraints. These are the key constraints, which we call the triple constraints in project management. But there are so many other constraints when it comes to project management. There's quality, which is a key thing when it comes to IT projects, because you can't just ship the project out if there are so many bugs, critical things that you need to fix, right? And if the moment you put it out to the production, if the users are going to have a bad experience, it's going to be really bad for you as the software development team. So how do you balance out your scope, time, cost, and quality? Then there's risk as a constraint. What are the risks for your project? How do you identify those? How do you manage your risks? How do you mitigate those? Then there's communication, there's human resource, there's stakeholder management, procurement. There are likewise, there are so many constraints when you come to a project that you need to manage. However, given the limited time we have, I think what I can highlight is that these are the three main constraints when it comes to managing a project, right? Okay. Right, so I mentioned I'm going to mainly cover 5 topics. So we are okay with the first one, and we are about to go talk about the second topic. Before we do, is there any questions anyone wants to go ahead with? If not, I can go on to the second topic. All right. So in the interest of time, the next one I want to talk about is the role and responsibility of an IT project manager. As I mentioned, we look at managing the project from end to end. You get involved in all the stages of the project, from initiating the project, because at the very first point of you have the project chart. So project chart is a document that usually initiates the project. It's like the official project where you say, okay, we are going to do this project. And usually the project manager is assigned to a project with the project charter. Sometimes we have scenarios where the project manager is assigned beforehand, but if not, we have the project managers getting assigned with the project charter at the initiation stage. Then you start the planning stage, right? I mentioned there are so many constraints that we have to manage. Out of those, cost, time, schedule, scope, and quality, risk. So all of these things, what you do is at the planning stage, you work with your all stakeholders, including your project team, to kind of put down a plan for all of these areas, right? If it's your cost, you kind of make a plan for your cost. What kind of budget do you need? What kind of monitoring are we going to do during the project? And if like you set the thresholds, because like even though you say, okay, in order for me to build this feature, I need $100, you might need 120, right? So is 120 okay for you? So at the very start of a project, you define those thresholds. Okay, a 5% change or variation is okay. So all of these things happening during the planning stage of a project, right? So this is again something we talk about. And then we have executing, monitoring and controlling, closing. So these are the 5 key things that you look at when you're managing a project, right? So I think I briefly touched about some of the activities that happen in the initiation stage. Apart from those, a few other things that happen in the initiation stage is things like you try to identify why this project is important, and what specific problem are we trying to solve from this. Is there like a desired outcome? Are there things that are like, things that we cannot change? So there could be a project, it has to go by this date, because if not, there's no point of doing the project. So what are those key constraints? And then who are your key stakeholders? What kind of communication that needs to happen? Are we making any assumptions for the project? Like maybe we are making an assumption, we are doing a project for, we are planning a project for 12 months, and then we are making an assumption for human resources that 2 key people who are working on another project, they are going to finish the project and join the project by the 3rd month of the project. So maybe this could be an assumption, or maybe it could be anything related to the environment, or a new technology, things like that. So these are all things that you talk about at the initiation phase of a project. And as a project manager, in order to really manage the project, these are questions that you need to ask to kind of get a good understanding of what you're about to manage and what kind of a project you are getting involved in, right? So that's about project initiation. And when it comes to project planning, I'm sure most of you all have seen this view. So this is a template, a very high-level template that can be used, or something that you'll see when you see a project plan. Usually, you have tasks that kind of list down what's going to happen. You have, like, maybe if you look at the planning phase, you could have identifying your scope, or you could have documenting your scope. You could have architecture, like product architecture, solutioning happening. or you could have market research happening. You could have other communications like related to risk identification. So likewise, all these little items you usually put down in a plan, and it feeds into your project plan, because this is the document, or your project plan is the place where you all track all of this. You for each task, you usually have a start date, an end date, and an effort involved. It could be, see, this is another thing that you have to decide for your project. Each project could be different from each other. Sometimes a project might define, say, okay, we are going to track our effort from weeks, because it's a huge project which is going on for maybe 5 years. Or another project could have their estimations done using days, and others using hours. So likewise, each project could define how they want to do it, but this is kind of a very high level template that is being used to document those as project plan. And when you have a project plan, you can use dependencies like, okay, task A is dependent on task B. So in order for us to do task B, we need to first complete task A. So there are certain types of dependencies we use when we are doing the project plan to show those different levels of dependencies and identify risks and all of that, right? So this is basically a very high level template, and it could change from project to project based on the requirements. And also I have to mention, although there are various tools that are being used out there, depending on the project, we can use simple tools like maybe Excel as well, right? Although there's very complex tools like MS projects or other tools that support various complex dependencies, reporting, monitoring, and all of that. Sometimes, even in organizations, if the project is simple, to give that visibility, we use a simple Excel sheet. So likewise, it doesn't have, in order to get a project plan out, there's no specific tool that you need to use. It could be anything, right? And this view is what you call a Gantt chart view. So earlier here, you have a list of all the tasks you do, the dates, and okay, so you have list of tasks here. Again, the status is here, and you have a start date, end date, a duration, and all of that, right? So in the next view, what we have is like the same task breakdown, but it kind of shows in a bar chart view, right? This view is called a Gantt chart. This was developed way back in around 1970s by a person called Henry Gantt. And from that point onwards, it has developed to the point where we have this in many tools now. It kind of gives you a bar chart view in a calendar form, and it helps you really understand, since it gives you a visual picture, it really helps you to understand what the dependencies are and how to manage those, who's assigned to what, if there's over allocation. This view really helps you to manage that. So I think it's another key thing that we need to know about when it comes to managing projects. Right. Right. So moving on, we talked about initiating, planning, and when it comes to executing, it's all about facilitating the work that's going on. How do you, as a project manager, support to remove blockers, have good communication going on, maybe team building activities? How do you resolve conflicts, and get all the data necessary to ensure that the project is on track? All of this kind of falls under project execution. And then the next one is monitoring and controlling. So although this is kind of put there as the fourth phase to kind of give a bit more understanding of what's happening, this is kind of a activity that happens throughout the project. From initiation to closure of the project, you have monitoring going on, right? Because even from initiating to planning, there are some sort of activities going on which you need to track if they're going okay. So in order to do this, there are different methods we use for reporting. You can have different levels of reporting, different structure of reporting, and sometimes there are different calculations you use to make sure that your project is on track. And if not, you need to kind of work with all your stakeholders to see how you can bring the project back on track, right? So that's everything that comes onto monitoring and controlling. And the final part of is closing. So when you kind of think about closing, it kind of feels like, oh, this is easy. It's just, you complete all the tasks in your project plan and then we are done. But this is a very key stage, because this is where you talk about your lessons learned. And if there are things that you learn from your project, you do a retrospective, you document those, because going forward, if there's a similar project, this is your go-to point of what went right, what went wrong, and how we can improve, right? So it's a key activity, and there are certain other things of activities happening, maybe like official handover of your project. So if it's an IT project, if you're directly dealing with your users, you might get the user sign-offs, handoff of your legal documents, a lot of activities, key activities, payments, right? So key activities happening during this time of the closing of the project, right? Okay, so that covers the key things that we were hoping to talk in topic 2. And I am going to jump into the third topic, given the interest of time as well. So this is basically about the competencies of a project manager, right? I can summarize all of these into 3 things. First of all, your knowledge. You need to have a thorough understanding of the basics of project management. What are the key things that you need to manage? There are certain techniques that we use in managing projects, how to manage dependencies, conflicts. There's a certain level of instinct and experience that helps you. But in order for you to organize things, you need a good understanding, knowledge to back you in this, right? So that's why you need your knowledge. And then performance. So this refers to applying all the knowledge and the experience you have, because sometimes just because you know something, if you don't kind of know where to apply it, it doesn't really make help you, right? It doesn't make any of the tasks any better, or it's not basically efficient project management. So performance talk about how you can apply your knowledge and experience to your project in order to manage the project successfully. And the final one, the personal aspect of it. So this is the key part of it, because this is all about how you kind of put yourself out there as a project manager. How do you want to put yourself out there? Like, every person has their own way of managing projects. Sometimes different leadership styles, and different ways to manage conflicts, different ways to manage risks. So how do you incorporate all of that, your personal attributes, to make sure that you're helping to meet the project objectives and goals? And also a key part of it is your soft skills. If you're thinking about going into a project management career path, you really need to brush up on your soft skills, because communication, as I mentioned earlier as well, plays a key role. Because you are working with so many people, you need to, even if they are not good in communication, because this is a common scenario when you work on a technical environment, you come across people that are really good in doing technical work. They are very sound, they're experienced, but sometimes they might not be able to put the right thing out there, right? They might not be really good in their communication. So as a project manager, how do you get all these communications out? So that's a skill that you need to develop. Some of the skill sets are acquired, And some of these skills you need to develop by experience, and a lot of training that goes into it as well, right? And before we move on to the next slide, your soft skills, even though if you're not a project manager, if you're working on a project environment in a team, this is something that you can brush up, which would really help in that team environment. Right. So again, this slide talks about your personal skills that you need to talk about. So in the interest of time, I am not going to go into detail, but again, this lists down the key things as a project manager which you would need. Okay. And with that, the next topic is about to slightly talk about agile development methods that's out there, because earlier, even when I joined the industry, what was out there mainly in Sri Lanka is waterfall method. We used to get all the requirements from our stakeholders, get the customer sign-offs, and then we would develop. In between, there were cycles, we would go to them, get the sign-offs, user testing and all of that, but more or less it was a waterfall method. But throughout this time, you can see that the Sri Lankan industry have transitioned from waterfall to agile. And in most of the companies out there, what you see is them using some sort of agile development method. It could be Scrum, Kanban, it could be test-driven development, or design-driven development, extreme programming. So many methods out there that can be used to bring that agility, because at the end of the day, we need to be more sensitive to our stakeholders, and if they want the time to market to be faster, we need to be able to adapt. So in waterfall, what we used to do is kind of fix the scope and then manage the scope. So we would kind of limit the number of changes that we need to do. We manage change. And in agile, what we do, the main difference is we don't try to kind of discourage change, we embrace change. We try to see how we can adapt to all the changes coming in by prioritizing and seeing what else we can do to help support that change, right? So those are the key changes that we see in an agile environment. And with that change, how you manage a project also changes, because earlier you could list down everything in your project plan and say, hey, this is not in the plan, it needs to go through a change management cycle. But in an agile development environment, we accommodate change, right? So the key saying is fail. If you're failing, fail fast, so you know there's some sort of change that you need to do in order to make your project successful, right? So as I mentioned, now, not just Sri Lanka, globally, if you join any IT company, you'll see that most of the time you'll be joining this environment where agility is encouraged. So from the predictive plan-driven project management, you see an agile project management taking place. We are more adaptive to change and try to accommodate that. And there are so many methods that we use. But I think for the time being, for this session, knowing that there are other methods, plan-driven and agile-driven, predictive and adaptive methods out there is important. All right, and I think I can quickly cover the last slide here. It's basically about, if you're looking at moving into a project management career path, there are a lot of things out there you can do. Apart from developing your soft skills, getting the knowledge is also important. So in your degree, I know in the IT degree, there is a course, so you get a good understanding of what project management is, the basics from it. But if you're interested, there are so many other ways to get that knowledge around project management. Nowadays, you see there are various courses, And then you see MSCs, you even have degrees around project management, PhDs, if you're really interested, go into that area. So there are a lot of things that you can do in the academic side to get that knowledge in project management. And if you're looking into go into the industry, you can look at other qualifications, professional qualifications out there. So the most recognized ones are Prince2 and PMP, PMP offered by the Project Management Institute. So these are different type of certifications that are out there. And I think based on the company you work and the geographical location your company is based, the certificates that they value kind of tend to differ. In the US side, mostly what they look for is PMP, whereas if you're working in a company related to UK, and you'll see them asking for Prince2 instead. Basically, they all contribute to enhancing your knowledge in the area of project management. And before I wrap up, and if like for you to do these professional certifications, you need certain level of experience, right? So until you gain that experience, there are certain entry level certifications like if you take from Project Management Institute, there's CAPM, which is called Certified Associate with Project Management. So which kind of gives you that certification and covers the basics of project management. So it kind of helps you to go into the industry, and it will support your resume. And apart from directly looking at entry-level positions like project coordinator or any related junior level positions, the other path is you gain the knowledge and experience by working as a software engineer, quality engineer, business analyst, and really understand the end-to-end process of managing a project. And then after a couple of years of experience, you move from whatever the division you'd be in to project management. I know there are a lot of companies that encourage the change because then you're coming with experience and it helps you to understand what's going on, the issues, and support your team in their daily tasks. Right, so I think these are the things I mainly wanted to cover, the 5 topics. And with that, I think I can conclude the session. I know, Hishani, I took a little bit more time than planned. I hope that's okay. Can I take questions now, or do we have a later session where we can go into questions?
Madam, after the Kahoot session, we will have QA session.
Okay, sure. So in that case, I can hand over to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam, for your valuable time and the great session. Now it's time for the Kahoot session. We will put the link as well as the pin in the chat box. Do click the link and join with us. Kindly use your real name.
Okay, so we have dropped the link for the Kahoot session in the chat box, and the pin number is also given here. It's 1194216. So you can go through this link, or you can just type Kahoot IT, Kahoot.it on Google, and then enter this pin, given nickname, so you can enter the game. Come on, guys, is this all? So there are 40 participants here. Let's join quickly.
Guys, go to the kahoot.it and enter the PIN number.
We will give you 2 more minutes, so join quickly.
So far, 16 people have joined the Kahoot session. We will wait for another 2 minutes to start.
Let's start at 7:09. So 1 more minute. Come on, guys. Okay, Shani, I guess let's start. Okay, the first question. Let's see. So stay alert, guys. Integration of all project processes and practices to improve project management is due to centralization, environmental analysis, customer expectations, project management system. Go to your browser and click the correct answer. You got only 5 seconds left, 4 seconds. Yeah. Okay, so let's look at the scoreboard. Kavi is at the first place. Next, risk is usually blank as the project progresses. Increases, reduces, remain same, become negligible. Go to your browser and click the correct answer. So you can see the question in your browser. Wow, we got 8 correct answers. So it's reduces. Seems like you guys have been listening quite good. So yeah, the scoreboard still Kavi is at the first place, then Gayan, and then we have Marsha. Moving on to the next question. Assembling the project team and assigning their responsibilities are done during which phase of project management? Yeah, here initiation, planning, execution, closure. 16 seconds left. Hurry up. Wow, we got 15 correct answers. Oh, sorry, we got only 2 correct answers, and most of them thought that it was the second answer. All right, so Gayani has come to the top of the scoreboard. Kavi is in the second place, and Malsha the third. Which of these is not one of the constraints of a project? Scope, resources, team, budget. 14 seconds, 13, 12. 5 seconds go. Yes, the correct answer is team, and 6 of our people has selected team. Well done. Yes, let's have a look at the scoreboard. Wow, Gayani has answered on streak. So yeah, Gayani, then Kavi. The advent of project management has been most profound in automobile manufacturing, construction, information technology, the US Department of Defense. 10 seconds more. Wow, we got 17 answers, 18 answers. 19, wow, yeah. 13, yes. 13 people have given the correct answer. It's information technology. Well done. Wow, Gani is on streak, so you can see we can't, seems like Kavi has to give a good game to pass Gani. And yeah, Nimalka is on the third place. Let's move on to the next question. Which of the following is not considered to be a characteristic of a project? An established objective, a clear beginning and end, complex task, only for internal use. There are only 2 answers, guys. You better hurry up because there are 7 seconds left. Yeah, we got 10 answers. 11, 12, 13. Well done. Yes. For internal use. So it's the correct answer. And wow, it's amazing. So 13 of you have answered, given the correct answer. We have had a bunch of attentive people here. So Gayani is on the top of the scoreboard still, and Kavi is second, and Tivija has come to the third place. Moving on to the next question. A professional organization for project management specialist is the PMI, AMA, MIS, PMBOK. 6 answers, 10 answers. Yeah, we got 15, wow, 17 answers. Yes, the correct answer is PMI. So 10 of you people have given the correct answer. Still, Gaini is at the top of the scoreboard, and then it's Kavi, and Sandali has come to the third place. Okay, the eighth question for the day. From among the following activities, which is the best example of a project? Processing insurance claims, producing automobiles, writing a term paper, completing a college degree. Yes, so we still have 3 answers. You better hurry up. 15 answers. 15 answers. Okay, the correct answer is writing a term paper. So most of you have selected producing automobiles. Let's check the scoreboard. Yes, so Kavi is at the top of the scoreboard, Gayani, then Sandali. The ninth question, which of the following constraints is not typically found in managing projects? Time, people, cost, performance. That's an easy question if you were listening. So yes, 13 answers. Come on, 15, 17. Wow, we got 20 answers for this question. And 11 people are right. So the answer is also people. Let's check the scoreboard. Yes, so Kavi is at the top. Raini, then Sandali. The final question for the day. So we will be selecting a winner out of this. Which of the following characteristics is not typical of a project manager? Managing a temporary activity, possesses in technical knowledge, managing a non-repetitive activity, managing a non-repetitive activity. All right. So yeah, there's a repetitive answer anyway. Sorry for that. So the correct answer is possesses in depth technical knowledge. 3 of you have got the correct answer. Yes, so the third place goes to Sandali. Congratulations, Sandali. Second place is Gaini. Congratulations. And yes, we have the winner for the day here. So it's Kavi. Kavi, well done. So good game, all of you. Yes, so the winner, Kavi, can we know your full name, or can you send us the details to the Women in Free Open Source Software page of RUSL through Facebook, so we can contact you? Yes, so thank you. Good game, guys. Thank you for the participation. And over to you, Vitushana.
It was a great session. Thank you all for participating in Kahoot session. Now it's time for Q&A session. If you have any questions, you can ask now. You can unmute and ask, or you can post the question in the chat box. So we have one question. Can I start to work as a project manager in industry after completing a project manager internship, management internship as a computer science undergraduate? Is it fine to do like that?
Um, sure. So, as I mentioned, there are two ways you can join the industry. So, one being you join a company as a project management intern and then work your way through. So, in different companies, you will see that you will have different career paths. Sometimes you, after the internship, you might be able to join as a project coordinator and then a junior project manager and go work your way up from there. But in some of the companies, this is not the case. They because earlier when IT companies were more in a waterfall method, there were more internships related to project management, and they used to groom people or students coming out from university, fresh graduates, and then um, have a available path from entry level to go to that higher level positions. But now that you see the industry moving into more of agile development methods like Scrum and Kanban, you see some of the activities that initially that used to happen or used to be done by project managers taking up by Scrum Masters. So Scrum Master is a role in some companies that are placed by project managers, but in some companies, they are played by different leaders, even in teams. Like they could be software engineering leads, quality engineering leads, anyone in a team who's willing to step up to that leadership role. So because of that, some companies, they encourage, especially when they are hiring a person for project management, they expect some level of experience because they are expecting them to have that skill set to work with people, be able to manage complex scenarios, manage people, and have that maturity and experience involved when they join the team itself. So in different companies, you see different ways you can enter the role. But I would say the most common way you see in the industry right now is, or the most encouraged way is to learn or experience the end-to-end project management cycle by being part of it as a software engineer or a quality engineer or a business analyst or anyone. And then when you get that understanding of maybe 3 to 4 years of experience, then move into project management. Having said that, it is not impossible to go through the other path of joining as an intern and then working your way So it's out there. Both ways are available for you. But I guess now with the new techniques using in most of the companies, what they expect a little bit of experience. I hope I answered the question.
Thank you, madam. I hope Taruk got got an idea about his question. Any other questions? So we have another question. What are the other qualifications for be a project manager?
Is this apart from, I'm assuming this is apart from completing the subject in your degree program? Is it to enter into the industry? Okay, let me answer the question, assuming that this is the case. If not, do let me know, and I can try to answer the question as best as possible. So basically, what other qualifications is, if you're entering in, as I mentioned, to get the knowledge, there are various other qualifications that are available out there. You have, I mean, if you have completed your degree and if you're looking to go into a project management career path, there are higher level degree programs like MSc or your postgraduate programs. But however, my advice is, if you're looking at going into the career path, apart from getting that knowledge, especially if you're looking at an MSc or in project management or PhD, it's always better to get some experience in the industry itself, because otherwise it will be, things you learn in the book, but project management is a very practical subject where you have to gain a lot of knowledge by experience as well. So uh, uh, if you're looking at the career path, I'd say after completing your degree, go into the industry. First of all, try to get a good knowledge of the software development life cycle, the issues you usually get, how you can resolve them. And then by getting into the path, once you have a certain level of experience, look at your doing some other qualifications, maybe like an MSc or a PhD or any other related qualification. And in the industry, as I mentioned, if you're just entering in, you can do CAPM. This is offered by PMI, Project Management Institute. I can share the details, or just if you do a quick Google search related to PMI, you can see all the certifications listed down there. So CAPM is an entry-level qualification. So you only need a certain level of experience to do that. And I'm sure with completing your degree program, you would be able to, you'll have enough qualifications to do the certification. So that is a good entry point, because it gives a good understanding about the basics of project management. And also it will, if you're applying for an entry-level position in project management, for whoever's looking at the resume itself, it would give you a good impression, because they know that you're serious about your career path, and you're interested, you're inquisitive, and you've done certain level of background studies around it. So I think it'll give you an competitive advantage of doing the examination. But apart from that, there are a lot of free material out there which you can read and learn as well, even about having a good knowledge about agile methodologies, even project management. Even if you go to the PMI site itself, there are a lot of information that you can see. So I would suggest make use of all of that freely available information as well. That would also give you a good advantage.
Thank you, madam, for your guidance. And another question is, what is the highest level as a PM?
Okay, so so this is again, different companies have it. The step level is different to achieve the highest level. So sometimes you enter as an intern, and then you can go up to the level of a senior project manager. In most companies, the highest level of designation you will see is senior project manager, and thereafter you have to look at like in your career path. You have like various other paths you can look into. If you talk, I mean, when you go into details about talking project management, uh, project management is like the lowest level. Like if you take an organization or an IT company, managing project is the lowest level of management or delivery management you do. And then these projects add up and kind of form programs, right? And then you have people managing these programs which consist of different projects. So, and then these programs kind of combine and you have portfolios. So in your career path, your project management career path goes up to senior project manager. And then the next step is your moving into program manager, which is like managing few projects all together. This needs certain other knowledge, skills, and you have to have quite a lot of experience to be able to manage multiple projects at the same time. It could be very complex, right? So as an example, the company I work for right now, which is Pearson, we have programs which we have teams in multiple geographical locations. The team I work with, I have teams based in Sri Lanka. We have India, we have US, and also in US, we have East, West Coast, and Mid. And then we have teams in Poland and a few other countries. So managing a program it kind of has its own complexities. So once you achieve the level of experience you need, you move on to the next level of program managing. And then that career path could go into portfolio management. And as I mentioned, your company kind of defines based on how big your company is and how your company is structured, your path could change. And sometimes after you reach the level of senior program manager, some people choose to go into delivery management. So they could look at career path or a designation as head of delivery and go through that career path. And sometimes like although some companies are large and they have programs and portfolios, and some companies that do not have that, they have like after you reach the level of senior project manager, the career path kind of goes into director or then VP or senior VP. And as a good example, the current general manager for Sri Lanka in Pearson Lanka. So like Pearson Lanka, like the footprint in Sri Lanka is the technology arm is really huge. We have about close to 900 people in Sri Lanka itself. The current general manager is from project management kind of career. His path was in career. His career path was project management, and from going through that senior project management level, he was the head of project manager. And then he moved on to taking up that responsibility as the general manager. So there's a lot of possibilities available once you reach that senior level for you to go into. I think it would be unfair to say this is the highest level that you can go to. What I'd like to say is it's limitless. You have the experience, and if you're really good at what you do, you have a lot of opportunity out there.
Thank you, madam, for your explanation. Now we came to the end of the QA session. I hope that the participants have got a couple of ideas regarding this session. I consider it's a great privilege to invite Ms. Divicha Bhaskaramurthy to deliver the vote of thanks.
Good evening, everyone. It is such an honor for me to get the opportunity to thank you all in this webinar on project management on behalf of Women in Force, Rajarata University of Sri Lanka. I extend my gratitude to our honorable guest speaker, Ms.Prabhashani Perera, visiting lecturer at Rajarata University of Sri Lanka and senior project manager at Pearson, for taking out time from her busy schedule to grace the event with her most precious knowledge. Thank you for teaching us a lot about project management and inspiring us throughout this session. I would like to express my gratitude to all the esteemed delegates of the webinar for their presence and contribution to make this webinar a success. Thank you for your participation and wish you good luck for your career. Last but not least, I must thank the organizing team, Women in First volunteers, for working hard and providing immense support to make the webinar successful. Once again, thank you, everyone.